So we're now up to item 14, and we've got Emma Davis and Diane Schillander going to come to the table about this one. Welcome. And I guess kicking off, do you want to just give us a brief outline on your report, although I'll take it as read? And I know this was due to come pre-COVID, I believe, and it's been delayed because of that. But we're here today to discuss this, and yeah, if you could just kick away and give us a bit of a run. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Chair. So the background to this paper was in April last year, 2019. Staff were asked to go and have a look and investigate the merits of a water conservation order. And that came about after a suggestion from Aotearoa Water Action. They presented at an earlier meeting suggesting that the water conservation order may be a mechanism for protecting our aquifers. So we initially reported to Council, and it was asked that we provide some more analysis on the merits of a water conservation order. So this paper was prepared. It was prepared for a March meeting, and then with COVID it's been delayed. So we've recently sent out an update with the latest information, which is mostly around some progress with some of the statutory work that's been undertaken. So overall, our recommendation is that the Council not pursue a water conservation order as a mechanism. The reasons for that is when we look at other water conservation order applications, we can see that they are incredibly time consuming and resource intensive. And we think that there are a wide range, and there are other regulatory instruments that we could actually use and would be better to give effect to looking at how we can protect the aquifers and our water. At this stage, there have been no water conservation orders granted for groundwater, although there is an application for Pupu Springs, which is going through the process. And that's currently with the Environment Court after the Special Tribunal recommended a water conservation order. But again, it has got different elements to it than what we would be seeking in terms of the protections for the aquifers. One of the particularly complex aspects of this case is that it's hard to actually define what the water body is. And so the area, the geographical area, spans not just Christchurch City, but also Waimakariri and Selwyn. So that would make it incredibly complex to actually define the water body that we are actually seeking a protection order for. So our recommendation is that we use the other statutory instruments at national level and the local land water regional plan to advance the measures that we need to put in place to protect Christchurch's groundwater and aquifer system.
Thank you. And just on the, when you say it's complex because it's hard to define the boundaries, that could be overcome by putting in a joint application with the other authorities?
Absolutely. So if the decision was to do that, we would need to work across with those other districts. But
the rest of the report would still stand that it takes a long time, and it's fairly unsure that it would be a successful outcome anyway. But that would be the way to overcome that kind of
yes, that would be
problem.
that would be a way. Absolutely, working together with them to make a joint application.
Yeah. And so the Te Waikato Pupu Springs, where's that now? Because that's been 2 years since the hearing, hasn't it?
Correct. So the special tribunal that heard the submissions and the evidence came out with their recommendations in March this year, and that was published and is available online. There is a period of time after which a special tribunal's report is released that there can be submissions on the recommendations in the report. And in this instance, there were 10 parties that made submissions on the special tribunal's recommendations. Those submissions then go to the Environment Court. So the submissions closed on the special tribunal's recommendations in May, as I recall, and it's basically, the ball is, as it were, in the Environment Court's court. At this point, the hearings have not yet been set by the Environment Court to hear those from those 10 parties. There's a outline of the process of how this all works in the report here. So what will happen is that the Environment Court will hear the submissions. The Environment Court will then make its own recommendations, and those then will go to the Environment Minister. The ultimate decision maker is the Environment Minister.
And so that application was for, obviously one of the key features is the water body has to have outstanding qualities and demonstrable, and obviously the,
Outstanding
the
and intrinsic
Waikato
value.
Springs have, and I would say that our aquifers have too. But there are other, I think you've said in the report that the water conservation order is really more about protecting the quantity of the water than the quality. Is that fair to say?
Certainly for some of the other water conservation orders, that would be certainly true.
Oh, okay, but they're more surface water, aren't they?
With the Cooper Springs Water Conservation Order, in the first instance, what the applicants were seeking was to prevent further degradation of the springs and its unique clarity. It is a unique water body, not just within New Zealand, but internationally, and is recognized as such.
Yes.
Groundwater, and it's the aquifers, the Arthur Marble aquifers, which are part of the Water Conservation Order application, are part of the application because it's that water that feeds into the springs.
Yeah.
But in the first instance, in a way, it's the springs themselves that are intended to be protected, and then by extension, the water that supplies those springs.
So in a way, you could look at what we're asking for here is, and it did come from the nitrates issue, the nitrates incursion issue into our aquifers, is that's what we're looking to protect, and it would be subsequently dealing with the pollutants, the contaminants that would threaten that would actually be addressed inadvertently to protect our aquifers.
Yeah, potentially.
So you're saying that we'd be better to use other regulatory instruments. And I think what we're seeing, and the frustration for us is here, we don't feel that they are working to our advantage. So is there any way we can strengthen, or is there anything else that we can do to bring this to the light?
Well, there is one thing that, as you were alluding to earlier today around the government's action for fresh water.
Yeah.
One of the, so there was a whole suite of actions that the government was proposing in the September consultation document, one of which has to do with amending the national environmental standards for human drinking water sources, which hasn't come through yet. So one of the things that the government was proposing was to include explicit contaminants of human drinking water, and they specifically called out nitrates in the discussion document. We haven't seen that come through yet. They've been quite focused on three major instruments: an amendment to the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, a new National Environmental Standard for freshwater, and then stockwater exclusion regulations. And that's all just come through and will be coming effective next week.
Oh,
So,
really?
Yeah, September 3rd is when those three instruments become effective. One of the interesting things about the change to the national policy statement for freshwater management is the fact that the national bottom line for nitrates in surface water has changed and is now, I don't have it in front of me, so it's my memory. I believe it's 2.4 milligrams per liter nitrate nitrogen, which is considerably less than what the national bottom line had been under the existing 2017 version of the NPS. So that's a fairly major thing right there.
So is that still measured on an average or a median?
Yeah.
So that means it could be as high as, I don't know what, 6?
Well, I mean, you're talking about a median, so I'm not a
I know,
freshwater
yeah.
ecologist, but your high could only go so high if your median is set at as low as it is.
I mean, it's fair to say that focusing on those 3 is actually going to protect the drinking water anyway. The NPS, the NES and the stock water exclusions, they're all going to help protect the drinking water anyway. So, and when you say the human drinking water aspect is coming up next, does that give us an opportunity to feed into that or make comment or?
Yes, so I expect they certainly indicated this in the consultation document last year, that there would be further consultation on changes to the NES for sources of human drinking water. So I would expect that they will be consulting arguably after the election if this current government comes back in. Not sure what will happen in terms of what the government will look like, but if there is going to be a change to that NES, then there would be public consultation, and I would expect that we would want to make a submission.
We will, definitely. All right, thank you. We'll open up for questions, Anne.
Thank you. I'm particularly interested in how we protect our aquifers and wondering if you've given, I mean, apart from the statutory stuff that you've alluded to, is there an opportunity, you know, sort of for us as a council to have a sort of a champions group or something like that to set up to just particularly focus on our aquifers? Would that be useful? Is there anyone else doing that?
Well, I am aware that, and maybe David might speak to this. Through the mayoral forum, there are a number of sub-forums, and one of which has to do with drinking water. So from that perspective, even if they might be focused on the more infrastructure side of things, I would expect that protection of the drinking water source would also be part of that discussion, but I would defer to David on that.
Do you have a comment there, David?
Sorry.
Does the Mural Forum have a particular focus on drinking water as opposed to just infrastructure for groundwater?
At the moment, yes, it is on infrastructure basically for drinking water. I think though that there are mechanisms. If you have a look at the recommendations that came out of Havelock North, there are, and Emma, you touched on it, that there's going to be new environmental standards. They are actually going to flow right across to look at that protection of groundwater. There is some work that got referred to today done by Otago University at the moment around nitrates.
That's on the link to colorectal cancer. Yeah.
We are also currently submitting on the Land and Water Regional Plan, and as we've had conversations with ECAN, it's about having a collective voice around that as well. And, you know, we've talked about having further conversations with them, and at the next co-governors forum we talked about getting a update from a technical expert, so that we've got a really good understanding of the issues as a basis of sort of champion both at a central and regional level on these issues.
Yeah. I mean, the big issue, the big debate is that maximum allowable value for nitrates. And I think that when I asked Helen Beaumont the other day how long that research work would be on the link between them, how long's a piece of string, you know, so I don't know when we're going to see that, and that could be key to actually getting any changes, although it is heartening to see that has been lowered in the healthy Action for Healthy Waterways document, which is something.
I'm thinking too whether through the Water Zone Committee, so we talked about having representation on the Waimakariri, and so that would be an opportunity in that committee and forum to advocate for the interests around protecting our
But
drinking water.
surely the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee itself can submit to the Waimakariri. There's one I think they have made comments to
Yeah,
that
they,
effect.
back when the Waimakariri Zone Committee was doing their ZIPA, their Zone Implementation Program Addendum,
Yeah,
yes, there was a letter that went from the chair of the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee to the chair of the Waimakariri Zone Committee.
yeah, requesting that they lower the MAV for nitrates. And the response, what's happened?
Well, that was, basically it was a submission,
Yeah.
as it were, yeah. You may recall that the city council also made a submission
Yep.
on the ZIPA. The Zone Implementation Program Addendum is used by staff at Environment Canterbury to then work on changes to the Land and Water Regional Plan. Most of those would be specific to the sub-regional chapter for the Waimakariri Zone, which they have done. That's part of Plan Change 7. There was 3 parts to Plan Change 7, and that was the Part C. And that's currently in progress now.
They take so long. And we made a very, very strong submission to Plan Change 7. We made some strong requests
Yep.
there, so
Yes,
particularly
and
around
that's
the
at the hearing
nitrates.
stage now. We're expecting hearings to be before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Right, and of course it's been delayed, I suppose, as usual. Any other questions from the committee? Leanne?
Just a couple. I mean, you refer to the possibility of the change of a High Court decision on Aotearoa Water Action Judicial Review, but as we know, that was unsuccessful. And I saw a press release from ECAN in relation to it, but I didn't actually see, given that the council made a contribution to the cost, are we getting an update on that?
Brent and
Just
I
a-
just spoke about that, so we understand that AWA are not progressing any further with their action.
So is there a report being prepared for council on it? I mean, it doesn't have to go through the committee, presumably, although it was a contribution that the council made. So I think
Yeah.
as
Yes,
a matter
yes.
of due process,
Yeah,
there should
to
be a report back
Yep, we can
on
do
the
that.
outcome
Yes.
of the case.
Yep.
Because this was actually primarily the reason for wanting to consider this option, which is that there are. It was the existence of consents that were no longer being used that went with the land when it was purchased and then repurposed
That's right.
for water bottling as opposed to the industrial purposes that it had before. And given, I've just been out this morning to the recycling plant, with the fantastic announcement by central government to make a significant investment into Eco Central, which is great for the city and actually great for the country in terms of the environment. But, the production of plastic bottles, and, I know that the focus has been on this particular one, but Coca-Cola does it with the power, whatever it's called, the bottles that...
Powerade.
It's not Powerade, is it?
Oh, pump.
Pa-
Oh, the pumpkins, there we are.
Pump,
That's
yeah,
the Coke.
Pump. That's Coca-Cola, bottled in Christchurch, sheer plastic, sheer waste. So,
Your own bottle, Sam.
and so it's yeah. So I'm just making the point that it was a bigger issue than just the
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
water, yeah.
yeah.
I think there was the LGNZ remit
Yes.
recently.
Yes.
Yes, that'll be effective, I'm sure.
Yes,
I
But-
know.
now. But anyway,
Sorry,
Sticking
but
to the
anyway, so
report.
that's so the idea of going down this track was absolutely a right one. But I do agree with the recommendation that, unfortunately, this particular approach may not be the solution, but it still could be. And this is my other question, which is in relation to 6.4, which I was quite surprised to read that according to this paper, there is it doesn't involve a significant decision in relation to ancestral land or a body of water or other elements of intrinsic value, and therefore does not specifically impact mana whenua, their culture and traditions. And given the entire debate that we had yesterday, I just find that extraordinary to suggest that this has no impact on mana whenua. And I would much rather that if we had gone down this track that we would be doing so in partnership. So what sort of discussion did you have with Ngāi Tahu in relation to this paper, and I guess in particular to Ngāi Tuhureri, but your comments about Selwyn might suggest that the area is a little bit further than just Christchurch and Waimakariri.
Given we haven't had any discussions with Ngāi Tahu on this, and so that was on the basis that we weren't recommending to pursue the water conservation order, but we take the point, and certainly if we were recommending, I mean, it would be absolutely necessary. And but yeah, in this instance, we didn't have any conversations with them.
Yeah, I think just for noting, and this did come up yesterday,
yes,
and
absolutely take
which
that
is
point, so
that phrasing has
yes.
been dropped into documents without
yes.
consideration
Mm-hmm.
given to the impact,
yeah.
and the reality is that this should have been involving Ngāi Tahu from the start. So even if we requested this, so we're going to have to find a better way of writing resolutions at the beginning of a process, so that any discussion about whether we would have wanted to consider pursuing a water conservation order should have engaged our partners right from the get-go.
I think that where staff are coming from is that they've responded to our request in a kind of a legislative way to say, look, because of these things, it's going to be very challenging to do this, so we're recommending don't. If the recommendation was yes,
which is
they
why,
would have.
No. I'm saying that that's unacceptable. From a council's point of view, from a governance point of view, we're talking partnership. We're not acting partnership. And if we're going to act partnership, and what I took responsibility for it, and I said it wasn't the staff's fault, that the council, from a governance point of view, when they write these recommendations from the start, we need to identify that they have to reach out to our partners right from the outset. So this should have been a conversation with Ngāi Tahu from the start, is the point that I'm making, because it may be that they would have found that there was considerable research and analysis that's already been done in relation to what is a significant body of water.
Yeah. And I guess we need to fix that somehow, don't
Absolutely, and we're certainly, in terms of thinking about the work that we're doing across the strategic policy realm, making sure that we give much earlier consideration, and we're much more aware, and thinking how to do that. So the point.
It's walking the talk. Yeah.
And we did have an apology for Shane today. He's off-site today, so that's why he's not here, but we will update him on this agenda item. Yeah.
Just on that, the resolutions you passed yesterday will actually encourage and give us a lot more opportunity for those conversations. We have had them quite extensively over the comprehensive stormwater consent, and we've had them a number over Whakaraupo, including meetings on the marae, and obviously as we've worked through the drinking water one. So I think that forum around the whole of the water area, and that's not necessarily the only area that Ngāi Tahu is interested in, we're certainly expanding far more into that field than we have in the past, and certainly I think with Shane's help we'll take every opportunity we can to work in that field.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, Leanne, you might be able to give me some guidance here on the mayoral forum currently not focusing on the drinking water. Is there anything that we can do to facilitate that?
In relation to
Groundwater protection, our
groundwater
aquifers.
protection,
Yeah.
the Environment Canterbury is the lead on that, and of course we're all involved through the zone committees.
Yeah.
So I don't know what.
It doesn't seem to be on the radar. They're focusing on infrastructure, but not. Perhaps it's not the place for it.
No. I mean, it's not correct though.
Just
I mean, it's not that they're not focused on it. I mean,
Well,
there are many different elements.
Currently.
I think the question that was put to Dave was, what was the focus of the drinking water, sort of the subcommittee that's
Yeah,
been
the
set up.
subcommittee, yeah.
But that is specifically in relation to the three waters,
Yeah.
and it's specifically focused on drinking water. So of course it's focused on infrastructure, but it's a separate issue from the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, which is owned by the Mayoral Forum. So it's not right to say that we don't have an interest in.
No, it wasn't that I don't have an
or
interest. I
focus.
think it was more of a focus. But
The committee that's
source
been
water
set up is
protection.
purely to focus on the challenges we've got over the next 12 months of looking at these
Growth.
restructures. But like you say, Leanne, and I'm not sure, maybe Emma can help me here, but certainly the tools of the regional council have got around the regional management of water, and also the regional policy statements and the land and water regional policy statements. Those are the big tools that would give us the regulatory control if we knew what that regulatory control limits should be and how we do it. That's my reading of your report, and I think that it is part of the work. I think we will need to have that conversation in a region.
Well,
because I imagine
we
Ash
also
Person will get quite
we also
upset,
wrote to the Minister
potentially.
for the Environment and
Yeah.
asked him to adjust the drinking water standard for nitrate. And I mean, you'll probably recall this, but the message that we got back was that they would that they'd set up a who was it, the guy that's gone into the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet to assist with the research. Remember there was overseas research. Sorry, I'm scraping in the back of my mind now.
So we've set up, the government's authorised a survey in Otago that's in process now. No, it's
Was
Otago
that the
University.
follow-on from the Dutch?
Otago University are the lead on it, but it's to do a New Zealand-wide.
Yeah. But we don't know how long it's going to take,
No, but we need,
start.
if we want the World Health Organization to change its standards, then we need a model to support the. Sorry, I can't remember what was the country that did the testing.
the
Was the
Netherlands.
Denmark,
or-
right.
Yeah.
So we need another country to match what Denmark did, and New Zealand is ideally placed to do that.
Yeah.
So,
And
and that's what,
Yeah.
as I understand it, is
Yeah.
about to get underway. I
Yes,
don't think it
but-
has actually started, has it?
I believe it has, isn't it?
I couldn't
That's
say
separate
for sure,
work
but I
down
believe
at
that it has
Canterbury,
started.
at
Right,
Otago.
okay.
Yeah.
The other thing where we can influence is through the National Science Challenges. And so we are working with, across those programs, around areas of research interest. And so Marion Schoenfield, and we're sort of having better coordination to make sure that we can feed in where we can work in partnership with them and do, undertake study in a sort of an applied context that would be useful for us as a council.
Right, and I think that would be a really good noting thing to put in here. And is there any kind of updated memo you could give us from time to time if there's anything?
Absolutely, yes. Yep.
So how would we word that note? The committee notes that City Council is working with the National Science Challenges.
Yes, because
and-
and we actually, again, we had initiated to actually host a workshop across all of the different streams of the National Science Challenges
Yeah.
here at Council. It didn't go ahead because of the disruptions, but we're still very keen to do that. And that
Great.
will really ensure greater two things, coordination and sort of applied research with an applied and academic focus. So we think that's an exciting opportunity.
Right, and is that focusing on nitrates?
Well, a variety of things across natural hazards and, all of those sort of issues that are important to us.
Right.
So we can look at I just need to check my recollection of what we had in terms of nitrates.
Yeah. All right, that's good. All right, are there any other questions on the report? You happy to move it? Thanks, Jake. And James will second it. Is there any further discussion? No? Well, thank you very much for doing the work on the report. And it was very interesting reading, actually. I think I learned a lot through that. And it's also providing us focus on the regulatory tools that we do have and the processes that we can use to actually make our voice heard. And particularly, I mean, in the zone committee workshops the other day, we've been having workshops, and it's about how zone committees can sort of be more effective with their messages and being heard. So I think we've got to strengthen the zone committees and work together really strongly and be on the same page about this stuff, which I think is happening quite well. It's all about partnerships and collaboration. So have we moved and seconded? Yes, we have. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. And just before we close the meeting,